Hey guys, Human for Scale here with another video on using my favorite AI art tool, Layer.ai. I'll be making a layered digital trading card frame using Layer and Photoshop. I'm going to be honest, 90% of the work is being done by Layer, with the last 10% of composition and compositing work being done in Photoshop. It's a really cool use case that demonstrates how useful these tools are going to be for game artists. Let's get started. Alright, so here we are in Layer, and the first step in any trading card game is to make the art for the card. So I'm going to select the Stable Diffusion XL model here, and I've already got my prompt I've typed in. I'm going to fast forward to the forward acceleration because really you don't want to watch me just generating and waiting for the thing to generate. This is a larger image, so it's going to take a little bit longer to generate. I'm going to go for some kind of angelic Valkyrie kind of looking figure. I think I kind of want a darker background, so I'm going to type in dark background here. Going to hit forge again, fast forward a little bit. Look through some of my options. Okay, some of these are looking pretty good. Gonna keep going. And it's worth noting that if I trained my own art style in Layer, I could use that instead of the default Stable Diffusion art styles as well. Which is really cool because you have a very specific style for your game that you're going for, then you could do that from there. So I found a piece that I kind of like, and what I can actually do is click and put it as a reference image, as you can see here. This means that my future forges will now use that as a reference image, which means now when I forge another new 4 images, they're all going to be based off of that base image. And that gives me a lot of kind of customization that I can do with it. I can basically keep leapfrogging between different images that I like and hit generate to hit more. So I'm going to go and generate again and see if I find one that I'm more happy with. So that one actually looks pretty good. Gonna go to compare my options a couple more times. You can see it's mostly facial changes, but there's also slight armor changes, slight ways that their expression changes. But in general, they're all following the same guidance image, and that's what that reference image is for. So what I'm gonna go do here is pick the one that I kind of like. I think this is what we're kind of looking at. You'll notice that this is a 820 by 1230 image, which is kind of a weird size, but it's the size that I need for my digital trading card. And just going to double check to make sure I've looked at everything that I want, and I'm going to hit accept forge, which will finalize it, and then I'm going to go ahead and export it as a PNG. So now I'm going to go into Photoshop and drop that PNG into my Photoshop canvas. I'm going to make a new layer here, and I am going to set it to lower opacity just so I can see things more easily, because what I'm going to be doing now is actually drawing the frame of the card. So I'm going to grab a gold brush because I kind of want a gold frame. I want to go for that kind of really gilded looking look because her armor is very decorative and intricate. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw a quick card border over here. And this card border could be any shape I want it, to be honest. That's actually really the cool part about using these kind of tools. And actually Layer has a canvas inside its web interface that I'll show you guys later. However, I'm just used to Photoshop, and I'll be compositing everything in Photoshop this time, so that's why I'm going to be using Photoshop for this. So what I'm doing here is actually creating a couple of different components. I'm going to create a little power or health box at the bottom right, because in my game each of these cards has a certain amount of health, and I want to call that out within the UI, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in the bottom right. You can see how it kind of blends into frame. I'm going to go ahead and label it just to make it easier for myself as well. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and make a little red backing box, because in my card's description area, I'm going to have it have a special ability, and I want to call it out as special with a cool little UI element. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that really quick over here. You can see how this is very basic shape. Once again, I don't profess to be the best artist. I'm just going to go erase it a little bit so I can make it rounded. It's kind of like a really long pill. And yeah, that was good. So I've got the basics of my card kind of laid out here. You kind of see like this is as if you kind of sketched something out and you want to figure out how to really export everything so that you could give it to your artist and you could actually start making your art assets from there. So what I'm going to do now is export each of these individual components out. So I'm going to do save as. I'm going to call this, I guess we're going to call it an ability box. So we're going to save it as a transparent PNG file. because that'll make it easier to work with once I get into Layer. And you can see here, like, I'm really just trying to get the individual parts that I need. So I'm gonna go ahead and also export the big old card frame over here, and creatively make card frame. And then we've got the last thing, which is a little health box that I made earlier. So once again, one more asset. Gonna go ahead and save that out separately. This is gonna be HP box, maybe health point box. All right, so I've got all my assets. This is great. I'm gonna go ahead, retoggle on all my layers, just so I've got them there in my Photoshop document, and then go back to Layer. And what I'm actually gonna do is create a new asset. I could have layered everything within Layer. I mean, that's what the product is called, but I'm creating things a little bit separately here just to kind of show you the power of different workflows. So what I'm first gonna do here is set this back to 1820 by 1230, which is the size of my card, because I'm going to forge the card frame first. So I'm going to go ahead and drag those assets that I just exported into my file folder. 1, 2, and then 3. I'm going to select the card frame because that's what I'm going to be working with first, and that'll form most of the visual identity for this kind of experiment that I'm working with here. So you'll see that I've now imported the image. You can kind of see where it is. I've got that as the reference image, and I'm going to go ahead and type in my prompt here. It's going to be a golden metal card frame. I'm going to make it kind of really intricate. I like metal filigree would be really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in. Going to kind of want to specify this for like a fantasy card game, just to see if that gives me a little bit more options. And I'm going to change the model to a model that's specifically trained to make game UI. It's called Game UI 1. You can also train your own models to create your own kind of game UI. But you can see it's created a couple of different versions of that frame. They're very lightly accented. But what I'm actually going to do here is lower the similarity slider. And what that actually does is it gives Layer and the model more freedom to create a little bit more within that reference image. And you can actually see that's created more interesting designs that aren't just like plain yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and lower it a little bit further, down to 20%. I just kind of want to see what it makes, to be honest. This is kind of the fun part about working with AI artwork, is that, you know, I've given it a very specific direction. I've given it a kind of template to work inside, but it's going to generate just like a bunch of stuff. And I kind of see, you know, I can kind of see what I'm feeling, what I like. So I'm going to keep generating here. Fast forward to this portion so you don't just see me being indecisive like I was with the angel earlier. Because if I just showed me being indecisive, I'm saying this video would probably be twice as long. But really just trying to pick a frame that I think will work well for my game's aesthetic. So this one's actually pretty nice. It's got pretty strong lines with that cool intricate filigree that I was kind of looking for. So I think this is the winner. I'm going to go ahead and download it. Going to go back into Photoshop, and you can see how really easily it matches up. Going to drag it in. You can see right there, that's a finished asset. That's awesome. And it's fully layered, so I can easily toggle it on and off. Let's put the card back on. What I'm actually going to do here is kind of block out a little bit of shadowing, because I think that'll be useful to help the card pop a little bit more. Going to go ahead and put in the text box area. This part needs to be a little bit darker so that text is legible over any kind of artwork. Going to go ahead and put that over the artwork, lower the opacity there. And now that's a place where I can put my text. I'm also going to use my brush tool and pick a soft airbrush and draw some shadow around the frame, because that'll let me kind of really make the frame pop out from the card. So I'm going to head to airbrush, lower the size a bit, and then set it to multiply, and then go ahead and draw a little bit of shadows on each side. A little bit too dark, so I'm probably going to lower the opacity on this layer. Let's go ahead and lower it down. All right, I think that looks pretty good. So this is a great start already. This card frame itself probably would have taken a couple hours to make, but I think I made it in a couple minutes. And you can see the other UI elements that we're going to be working on now. So I'm going to go back and create a new asset. I actually like to have a separate asset for each one of these, just so it's easier for me to experiment with in isolation. I'm going to go ahead and bring in that health box that I was talking about earlier. This is going to be a little box on the bottom right for the game designer to put in the total health of the unit. So I'm going to go just drag it to the center just because I want a little bit more room. Switch the model back to game UI v1, which is that style that's specifically trained for making game UI art assets. I'm going to go and type in a similar prompt because I kind of want them to be similar style. It's a gold metal frame, intricate filigree, etc. there. But once again, it's really worth noting that if I wanted a specific look for my UI assets, I could train a model that lets me get that specific look, which I think is really awesome. And you'll notice here I hit forge, and then I've got some results already. You'll notice that also it generated super quickly. You can see the animation here. I'm not fast forwarding at all. And that's because right now I am generating a much smaller art asset. The smaller the art asset is, the less time it takes to generate. When I was generating that card frame of the angel, they were 800 by 1200 pixels. This one's only 200 by 100, or 260 by 100. So I'm just going to generate a couple here, pick one that I really like. These are all actually pretty good, to be honest. They were kind of hitting the mark. It's kind of hard to decide which one. But this one looks pretty nice. And what I actually kind of want to do here is make sure that I want to remove the background in case there's any artifacts left from when I was generating. I'm going to go ahead and upscale it a little bit to clear up the little details as well, but I think it's looking like kind of really good. We're going to let it spin on the upscaling here, let it keep going there. This will just kind of clear up the asset and make sure there's nothing that I missed. And looks like it's done, so what I'm going to do is remove the background just to make sure that everything is nice and transparent around the button. And yeah, that looks pretty good. Looks like it's a transparent asset. So now it's time to go ahead and download it. Alright, let's drag it in. Ooh, I got a lot of transparent space around here, so maybe I should have not exported the whole canvas as a PNG, but let's go ahead and drag it down there. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and add a drop shadow on it really quick just to make it float above the rest of the frame. I think that'll make it look a little nicer. Gonna go ahead up the size, reduce the distance so it's centered below it. And yeah, that's looking great. So I've also realized that I probably need some kind of circular UI element to tell what kind of type of card this is. So I didn't actually get the chance to block that in with like I did with my other shapes. But I'm actually going to show you how you can create something like that from scratch without having to actually make the circle first in another program like Photoshop and bring it in. So I'm going to go ahead and type in a prompt here using the same game UI v1 model. I'm going to ask it to make me a circular golden metal frame. So you'll see that I have no reference asset at all here, and it's going to go ahead and make me something that I want to put onto my card frame. So these are all looking pretty decent. I'm going to go ahead and keep forging. And as here, I'm not fast forwarding because once again, this asset's only 512 by 512, and it's it's actually not too slow, which is great. I'm really liking this circle with like an intricate kind of halo-ish around it. But I think let me see what I want. Let's go ahead and try this. Let's get a couple of variations of this. Cool. Yeah, you can see how you can use this really easily to get variations of a particular shape you want. Remember before when I was playing with the similarity sliders, right now it's at 50%, so it's going to try to stick with half of it, but I can make it more or less depending on how exact I want to get. So that's how a lot of iteration will come into play. So I think that looks pretty cool. However, it's a little bit too frilly. So I'm actually going to probably go to something that's a little bit more solid. So I'm going to get some variations of this more solid one just because I want to see if I can get something that really feels really ornate. Oh yeah, that one looks pretty ornate. Cool, so I'm going to go ahead and actually remove the background from this. Gonna hit the little scissors over here to remove the background. See if it takes care of that for me. Oh, it looks like I kept one of the old metal frames on another layer behind it. So yeah, you can kind of see that. Here's that old one, and then here's the new one that's fully transparent. So this is actually great. I'm going to go ahead and download that as a PNG and drag it in, resize it, put it up there. Go ahead and paste my drop shadow layer style to give it a little bit more of that floating effect above the frame. And yeah, I'd probably put the element or the type of card that it is in there. So it's a cool little piece of UI. And now I actually want to just show you an example of how you can make the icon that you might put in there. So an angel is usually a holy element in these kind of card games, and I need some kind of icon to represent that it is the holy element or holy type. So I've actually got this style called Game Icons V2, which is already a style that's trained up on how to make cool game icons. Once again, if I had my own specific art style for my game's icons, I could train a style on that and then kind of forge assets within that style very quickly. I'm just going to use this style right now because it's been pretty reliable for me. Go ahead and hit forge. You'll notice I'm not fast forwarding here. I believe on the back end the system is actually spinning up a GPU for each different style that I'm utilizing. So that first generation is always going to take the longest. Oh wow, these are actually these are pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more times. Maybe I just got lucky. Maybe the model's going to surprise me a little bit more. These are actually pretty decent as well. We got a couple cool candidates, but I really like this one over here. It's kind of like a sunny sunflower. I'm going to go ahead and remove the background just like I did previously. Ooh, that's not great. So what happened is I actually removed parts of the stars. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. This is something that I can easily take care of Photoshop. So I'm going to go actually and download the non-transparent PNG. And sometimes, these kind of AI tools do run into those kind of issues. It's not a huge deal because as an artist, I can clean it up myself. So I'm going to go ahead and drag in my little sun element. You'll notice it still has a background. I'm going to go ahead and go to select, color range, color pick the range I want to select there. Go ahead to quick mask tool down here, which will mask it out. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Control I to invert it. And now I've got a nice transparent icon. I'm going to go ahead and stick it in there, size it down a little bit. Go ahead and move it, and yep, there it is. Now, what I kind of notice here is that my circular backing element is kind of like blending in. So I'm going back to layer now, and what I'm actually going to do is show you how to edit an asset without even having to touch it in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the little brush tool there. And I'm going to actually carve a giant hole in the middle of this to make it more of a frame. Because right now it feels more like a backing plate. And that's not exactly what I wanted for my element. I actually want to make it have like a cutout in the middle where you can stick any elemental icon. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw in a circle. Really, I'm just trying to carve a hole here. I'm using my Wacom Cintiq pen. Not being super exact with it, but you're really just trying to draw a circle here. Get the frame a little bit thinner, and yeah, that's about good. So the cool thing is that I can go ahead and you'll notice that the preview already shows the giant hole I've carved. I'm going to write dark hole in the middle here for the generation prompt and just hit forge. And now it should be able to correct my asset to be a little bit more of a frame than a plate. And yeah, these look actually really good. Wow. I'm pretty impressed actually. So these are all really cool. They're pretty ornate. I'm going to go ahead and keep forging just to see what else I can get, but I'm actually pretty happy with these initial results already. So I'm going to go ahead, kind of compare to my old thing. I'm going to go take a look, and really after looking at my composition file, I think this one actually works pretty well. So what I'm going to do here is hit accept. Then I'm going to go ahead and download the PNG for this. Going to go bring that back into Photoshop, and then because I can just swap the asset, I'm going to go replace contents here, grab the other one, replace it back in, and bam, that looks great. And I'm going to go ahead and scale down the icon a little bit, and now it looks like much more of a frame than it does a backing plate, which is awesome. I want the backing plate kind of visual for the power or the health at the bottom, but I don't really want it for the top left type icon. But that's an example of how you can pretty much just use Layer to make an asset from scratch without even any blocked in assets. It's helpful to use the blocked in assets when you have a super, super specific shape or size that you want for something. So, for example, I'm going to go ahead and now make the ability box icon that I had blocked in earlier. That's that little red bar. Gonna go ahead and switch back to the game UI v1 because that'll let me kind of generate another piece of UI. Gonna go ahead and add this in. I made the mistake when I made the HP box of just making a really big canvas. I'm actually going to narrow the canvas to be really small, just as big as my little pre-rendered asset over there. Then I'm going to go ahead and type in my prompt. So what I'm going to call it is, I kind of want like a red crystalline background to really fit in with the high fantasy theme that I'm going with the rest of this card. So I'm going to call it a button because I want it to appear slightly raised. It's not really a button. I'm actually just using it as a backing element. But I think within the game, if these are taps on it, I'll probably give a quick explanation or some kind of tooltip of what the ability actually does. So we're going to let it forge over here. Once again, not really fast forwarding now that the assets are this small because I want you to see how fast it is in real time. It's going to be under a minute, which I think is pretty fast given the quality of what's being output here. So I've got 4 different variations. I've got this kind of weird looking button bar. That one's not that great, to be honest. But the other elements that it's made over here are actually looking pretty decent. The third one actually is probably, I think, the strongest out of these, but I'm going to go ahead and make a couple more just to kind of double check. So give it time to spin. Take a look at a couple more of my new options. Ooh, this one has like a little yellow / goldish accent on it. But really this one is totally fine. So I'm gonna accept that. Because I think, yeah, I'm probably gonna grab this one. This is what I want over here. And it's looking pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the background, just make sure there's not any stray pixels lying around. Gonna go ahead and download it just as before. And now this PNG doesn't have a giant transparent box around it. It's pretty small, and I can just slide it right on top there. And now you can see I have a nice little UI element in my text box. And the reason why I wanted this is I want to be able to call out to the player that, like, hey, this card has a cool special ability. So what I'm actually going to do is going to go ahead and kind of decorate that button in Photoshop. Layer doesn't have text processing just yet. They might have it in the future, but I think in a lot of cases, you'd probably actually utilize your actual game to render text on top. You wouldn't bake it into the asset. That's just generally not good practice. But I'm going to show you how to do it right now, just to kind of simulate what the card might look like once actually rendered in game, and to really show that like Layer is really good at just putting together that kind of final level of detail onto something. So right now I'm going to say like this card has 500 health, and I want to make sure that the player knows that this red box means that this card has a special ability. I'm going to go ahead and type that out, transform the text, make it smaller because it's too big for the box. Going to zoom in a little bit and give it a little slant. Just some fake italicizing right here. Shrink it down. That looks pretty good, but I think we can make it feel like it blends in more with this kind of crystalline element I just made using Layer. So what I'm actually going to do is overlay kind of the red color, similar hue over there by color picking it. Make it a little bit brighter just so it's more readable. I don't know, I want to feel like it's kind of chiseled out of the crystal underneath, so I'm actually going to go to Bevel and Emboss, do a hard chisel downwards, and now it looks like somebody actually carved the word ability into this UI element or into this little piece of crystal. Gonna go ahead and adjust the color just a little bit. It's looking pretty decent. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, make it more slanted. That's actually too slanted. Let's put it back. There we go. And cool, that looks pretty decent. I kind of want to see if I can get some definition around the letters. The stroke that I had before is probably too much definition, so I'm actually going to go ahead and edit that. Change it back down Let's see, maybe I have like a light-ish color so it looks like the edges are raised. This is too thick. We might have to go down to 1 pixel. It's actually, I think I'm going to go back to a black stroke, darker stroke to give it some definition. But yeah, now you can see I've got a cool little ability logo right there. And now it's time to just fill in what the rest of the card does. Obviously, like, this part is not super complicated. You don't need AI tools to do this, but I just like laying out stuff like this just so I can see what the finished product might actually look like. Gonna go ahead and make up a cool card ability. Yeah, angels are healing beings, so this, unit's gonna heal everybody for 50 HP every 3 seconds. That's gonna be its ability. We're gonna give it a name. Let's call her Clara just for now. Gonna put a little bit of more shadow behind the name to make it stand out. And then I'm gonna write some flavor text, right? Just something that helps build out the lore of the game. And change the color a little bit. So that's looking pretty good over there. I think all this is missing is really a nice icon to show that the bottom right is actually a health value. So again here, I don't need to draw anything in Photoshop. I can actually just draw something straight into Layer if I really want to. So I'm going to switch back to my Game Icons V2 style, and I'm going to ask it to make me a heart icon. But because I want it to fit in with the rest of my high fantasy kind of card frame, I'm going to make it a crystal heart. And of course it's got to be red. So got a couple of cool candidates over here. This third one's pretty decent, but I'm going to keep forging. It's not exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for more of a vertical heart because this card is vertically oriented. I don't want to take up too much horizontal space with it. And you can see, like, I'm kind of going through a bunch of different generations, but at the end of the day, I'm an artist. I can draw. So it's actually easier for me to go in here and give a rough sketch of what I'm actually looking for. And luckily a heart is not really a complicated shape to draw because even though I am an artist, I'm not the best at it. I'm going to go ahead and draw into shape and then fill it in. I just want a big red heart that's roughly in this shape. And notice that this heart is more vertical than the other more rounded hearts that the model gave me before. And those are perfectly fine, but they still fit my use case nearly as well as what I'm trying to get. So just going to go ahead and color that in, and you'll notice that this is now a reference image on the right side panel over there. So going to go ahead and keep filling, round it out a teensy bit. That looks good. I'm going to hit forge, and you'll notice that the results should reflect my guidance. Yeah, I mean, these are pretty much exactly in the shape that I need. So it's really cool how you can kind of quickly make like almost basically end game fidelity art assets using this. Oh, that's kind of funky. And these are all pretty decent. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one just because it's got enough cool little facets and everything that I like. Going to go ahead and hit accept, and then I'm going to download it as a PNG. Bring it back into Photoshop, bring that PNG in, size it down, add a drop shadow, kind of position things a little bit, resize my text, position things a little more here. And yeah, this is pretty much a finished card. So you can toggle between what I started with and what I ended with. And I did all of that in under around 45 minutes, I think. And the cool part is that this is a layered art asset. So I can go in and drop in any other artwork that I've generated to make different cards super quickly. So here's another angel artwork that I generated previously that you saw. And it's really easy to just switch back and forth. This is a game-ready asset. So really, really cool, really, really fast, and you can see how powerful this kind of tool set is for making games. Thanks, everyone.